Welcome to Manhwa Recaps, spoilers ahead, watch out, and take care. The manhwa starts off with a boy on the floor, saying that violence was an everyday occurrence. And that his father would beat him senselessly anytime he wanted. To the boy it was as natural as breathing. We see him with a target drawn on his face, as he is being held up in front of the most dangerous weapon known to man. The boy asks if they can't just hit him normally, saying that there's no need to do this. One of the bullies asks if he does not want this, saying that he thought he needed money. Kim Sung-ho is in jail for sexual assault and sentenced to 2 years. And he says that the boy's done anything that he could until now to make money. He shovels the snow for 30 cents, he warms their shoes for 10 cents, for 20 cents a day he'd act like a dog. And now being a human target should give him 50 cents. The boy closes his eyes saying he'll do it. And we learn that he's inside of a juvenile prison which takes anybody under the age of 19. He says that it is a place full of atrocious teens and that violence and crimes happen every single day. The rubber band snaps and then the coin goes flying through the air. It bounces around the bathroom until it finally lands into the urinal. Sung-ho and his boys laugh, asking if they have more rubber bands. And we finally learn the boy's name is Cha Ju-young. They tell him to go pick up the coin and he thanks them while running. Sung-ho laughs saying that it'd be too boring to let it go this easily, telling him to pick it up with his mouth. We see it under the water and the other prisoners say that that's a bit too much and that someone had bad diarrhea yesterday. Ju-young does not care and shoves his head straight into the toilet, leaving everybody speechless. They start feeling disgusted that he actually did it, saying that he reeks. Ju-young picks it up using his mouth, saying that with this 50 cents, he'll turn it into around $50. Saying that he's pretty much playing them. One of Sung-ho's men say that it's recreational time and they go to leave. Sung-ho tells him that he better clean up so he doesn't smell like shit by the time they get back. As they all walk away, they laugh at him, saying that he gave up on being a human. And then we learn that Ju-young is in here, for attempted murder and is sentenced to 3 years. One of Sung-ho's men asks why he's so obsessed with money. Saying that maybe he has a debt. A guard comes to the door telling Ju-young that he has a visitor. Ju-young says there's a simple reason why he's gathering money. Then when he gets to the visitor's room we see a girl asking why his face is so thin. She asks if he's being beat up, or if he's just not eating. We learn that Daeyeon is his childhood friend and that she comes to visit him anytime she can. He asks her why she's visiting so often, saying that she shouldn't waste her money. She bangs on the glass, asking if he thinks that she is a beggar. Then pulls out a jar of coins asking why he keeps sending them to her. She says even though she doesn't have parents, that doesn't mean she can accept suspicious money. He's surprised, asking why she brought it here. She asks if he's doing this because of their promise of living together after they graduate high school. She says that she'll prepare the money on her own terms. So he needs to take care of himself. The guard then tells her that visiting hours are over. She tells him to prioritize getting released from here. As she goes to leave she waves telling him to not overdo it. Telling him that's a promise. The instant she leaves his smile instantly fades. And he looks sad, he thinks about before he got locked up. We see him in the hospital apologizing to her. Saying that it's all because of his father that she ended up like this. As she's all beaten and bruised. She begins to shake and then hits beside him. Asking if he is kidding, saying that he should not be worrying about her. And that his dad is a vegetable after he beat him. If he never wakes up the police will make his sentence worse. Ju-young says that it's fine considering the domestic abuse he's received until now. His punishment shouldn't be too severe, at least that's what he thought. Until the judge told him that he was sentenced to 3 years of prison. Ju-young is completely taken aback because the only thing he's done was fight back a single time. When he's been subjected to his father's violence for his entire life. Yun tells him to make sure to eat properly. And to tell her if anyone is bothering him. Telling him that it's a promise. He turns his head away from her, explaining that if someone's in prison gets into trouble, it extends their sentence. Whereas being a model student can significantly reduce the time. So he has determined himself to be a model student for the next 3 years. He stares at a picture of them together after being accepted into high school. Sung-ho comes over, saying that she's quite a looker. Ju-young quickly hides the photo and Sung-ho questions him about it, asking if that's his girlfriend. Ju-young tells him that she's just a friend and Sung-ho laughs. Saying that he must be in a one-sided love, trying to get the picture from him. Ju-young says not this and Sung-ho begins to laugh, saying he shouldn't be barking back. He raises his hand saying he'll remind him who his owner is. He goes to hit him but a guard quickly enters the room telling them that they've got a new roommate. Sung-ho says that he has not heard anything about new fish. We see a man being forced into the room and one of the guards begs him not to start trouble. One of Sung-ho's men says that he recognizes him and he is the one who killed 7 delinquents in his school. His name is Ma Jim and he is sentenced to 20 years, which is the longest sentence in juvenile court. Everybody is scared of him. Even Ju-young is surprised by the fact that he killed 7 people. Nobody is saying a word until Sung-ho stands up telling them to stop being afraid. He gets into Jim's face saying that his face is very befitting of a murderer, but tells him not to get arrogant and to behave accordingly, while stretching his hand out. Jim looks down at it, then completely ignores him. Sung-ho laughs saying that he thought this was going to be easy, then leaps at him with a sneak attack. Jim dodges the attack, catching everybody off guard. Sung-ho is surprised that he dodged it and then Jim prepares his own attack. Ju-young says that is crazy and that somebody who has killed 7 people is just built different. Never mind, bro gets absolutely mogged by Sung-ho. As he is reeling from the punch, Ju-young is confused, but Sung-ho takes the chance to start beating him, while yelling that he better know his place, as everyone here is below him. Ju-young says that he expected Jim to fight back at least a little bit, but he just sits there taking every single hit. Ju-young says that he didn't expect him to be such a loser. Later on we see Jim sitting minding his own business until Sung-ho smacks him in the back of the head, saying to grab him some water. Because Jim refused to do even the simplest of tasks, everybody would jump him anytime he refused. Ju-young says that not even a pig would be this dumb. Now he's going to have it harder because of him being so slow. That night while they are all laying down, Ju-young looks over at Jim, asking what flavor of mental illness he has, as it shouldn't be hard to follow orders. It's natural to do what he says and not to get on his nerves. He suggests that he try listening to him for one day. Jim replies asking if he's always lived this submissively, which catches Ju-young a bit off guard. Jim turns away from him, and ignores him the rest of the night. Ju-young began to think about it, asking if he has been living submissively or not, trying to get out of here. It cuts to Yun, who is on her way back from the prison, saying that it's so cold. She says that Ju-young's lost too much weight and she should pack him some food, and he may not want to talk about it as he's probably having a rough time, but he should eat well at least. She smiles, saying that even though it's not much, he should feel touched that she's bringing him a lunchbox. As she heads across the street, since the crosswalk is green, a truck quickly speeds into frame. She looks over at it shocked, but Truck-kun does not slow down. Ju-young lays there with his eyes closed. As we see Yun's body laying on the road, as well as the food she packed for Ju-young, just as motionless as she is. The next day a guard tells Ju-young that he is sorry. Ju-young asks what he is talking about. The guard tells him that there was an accident yesterday in front of the prison. He continues to explain the news to Ju-young, whose heart begins to sink after being told the news. It cuts to him sitting in the middle of his room, and one of Sung-ho's men notices him. Sung-ho opens the door asking if he didn't clean the bathroom yesterday. He storms over saying that he's been out of it all day. Sung-ho then notices that he is holding the picture of Yun in his hands. One of his men tells Sung-ho about how she was killed yesterday in front of the prison and how she was his girlfriend. Sung-ho laughs, asking why he lied about her being his girlfriend, and snatches the picture out of his hands, asking what he'll do now that his girlfriend is dead. He says that she's quite cute and that it's a waste for him to be with her. Then he asks if anybody wants the picture, saying that he'll start it at 50 cents. They all begin to bid on it. A porkchop asks if it's possible to go on a date with the girl. The other henchman laughs, asking who would date a dead girl. Sung-ho says that if she were alive, not only would it be a date, but he would have plenty of fun with her while licking his lips. They all start to call him crazy, asking if he wants to be arrested again. Ju-young sits there in complete silence, and we see Jim watching him from across the room and recalls the conversation he had with him about how he's living submissively. But then decides that it's none of his business. Something catches his attention. As Sung-ho keeps talking, a fist comes barreling in from the side, hitting him in the face, as Ju-young knocks him straight to the floor. Everybody is caught off guard by this. Even Sung-ho, who lets out a scream. Ju-young looks like he's lost all reasoning. Jim watches this and flashbacks us to the other day when Ju-young was telling him about how his dad is the right-hand man of a pretty large gang, and ever since he was young he was beaten on a daily basis. But he could not do anything since it was his father. But there was one time where he couldn't take it any longer, and he refused to sit back. And that was when he messed with Yun. Sung-ho curses at Ju-young and tells his men to run his shit. This flashback continues as Ju-young says that at least while being beaten by his father he learned properly how to fight. And we see him taking on Sung-ho's henchmen. As blood flies across the room, Jim begins to have some cold sweats. We see blood everywhere in the room as Sung-ho apologizes to Ju-young profusely, pleading with him, saying that he can give him money. Saying that that's why he's always listening to them, right? It's because he needs money. Ju-young says that money is fine and all, but now he does not need it as he wails on Sung-ho's face. He says the reason for him to leave and then punches him one more time. Or to hold back is gone now. It jumps to a flashback of Ju-young being told to follow in his footsteps. His father tells him to stand up again, and Ju-young does so, only to be knocked back down again and again. His father gives him a cold stare, telling him to come at him properly. And he has to make him stronger until the day that this tattoo is carved onto his body. Ju-young says the only direction his misplaced anger could go was towards the eyes of the dragon, which was because his father had dragon tattoos. The flashback ends with the guards banging on his door, and they open it, surprised, asking what the hell happened here. They ask Ju-young if he did all of this, and he says yes. He gets put into a punishment room, and he begins to hold up the picture of him and Yun. With eyes full of longing, he recalls her asking if his father has gone mad, asking what kind of parent beats their kid on their first day of school. She says it's too much, and he should be here to congratulate him right now. Ju-young tells her that it is okay, as it's not the first time. She says she'll go talk to his dad, and he reminds her that she promised him that she would never step foot in his house. And if she breaks that promise, she'll have to call him Oppa for the rest of her life. She says that he really knows how to put people down. And then she mentions Seoul, saying that when they graduate high school, she will move to Seoul since she is sick of living in an orphanage in this nasty neighborhood. He asks if she's always been this materialistic, and he starts to realize that if she leaves, he will be left here alone. She asks if he plans to go with her. She grabs his hand, telling him to come along, saying that it is a promise. She says that if he does not keep his promise, he'll have to call her Nuna for the rest of his life. He tells her that he didn't agree to this, and a man walks up, saying they are a beautiful couple, asking if he can take a picture of them. And then that is how that picture was made. On the first day of high school, back at the prison, we hear banging from inside of Ju-young's room as we see him punching the wall. He says if only he had not come here, Yun would not have had to visit. He punches the wall again and again until his fists bleed. He says what happened to her is all his fault, as he begins to cover the painting in blood and tears. One of the guards calls out to him, saying that he's sorry about his situation, but he can't overlook this anymore. He hasn't touched his food since yesterday, telling him to calm down and eat, saying that the living must go on. Ju-young falls to his knees while crying, saying that he is sorry, and he repeats this over and over. Later on inside of the cafeteria, we see Jim eating, while some people talk about some rumors, and how Ju-young beat up everybody in his room and got sent to the punishment room. Apparently the room leader mocked his girlfriend who died in a car accident, making him go crazy. They start to laugh, saying that this is refreshing, and a man steps up and walks over towards them. One of them asks if this means there's a new leader in the room, and the man slams his head into the table, asking what they are talking about without him. He says it looks like they are having a lot of fun, and laughs, saying to let him in too. His name is Park Jonkin, and he is in for special assault. He asks them why they find it so amusing that somebody rebelled. They awkwardly look away, saying that they could never do that to him. Jonkin raises his hand, asking the guy that he slammed into the table. He asks if he is okay. He apologizes to Jonkin, saying he should not have said it. Jonkin laughs, then asks them about Ju-young. It cuts to a week later, and the guard is telling Ju-young that the room leader is still in the hospital. And they're letting him out in a week considering his situation, but not to cause any more trouble. They open the door to the room and we see Jim. Sitting down he watches Ju-young enter, but Ju-young does not say a word. Jim starts to think that the situation is going to be bad. Since he overthrew their leader, so his henchmen won't let him be. One of them curse and then start stomping towards Ju-young. Then hugs him asking if he is okay, saying that he had a hard time. They start to chat him up, while being friendly. Saying that it must have been tough in the punishment room. And to enjoy himself and relax. Jim is confused, but decides to ignore it and starts reading his book. Saying that he's only recently come to realize, he says at school there are many factors that matter, but here in this juvenile detention center, strength is everything. Out in the yard we see Jim leaning on a fence. Ju-young comes over and asks him why he did it. Saying that on the day that he beat up Sung-ho, Jim stopped him, and even when he himself came here after killing 7 people, so why did he stop him? He asks what the reasoning was, and Jim starts to recall the day that he killed all those people in the classroom, leaving their blood strewn out along with their corpses just laying there. He looks up and wonders to himself why on earth he did it. Jim can't come up with an answer. Then Jonkin approaches, calling out for Ju-young, saying that he is smaller than he thought, asking him how someone so small beat up Sung-ho. Then says that he was pretty weak anyways. He looks him dead in the face and asks him why he did it and why he rebelled. He asks if he was desperate to take the room leader's spot. But Ju-young says that he does not care about any of that and to get lost. Jongkin is surprised then smirks. He says he really has a shitty way of talking. Then pushes off the floor, punching Ju-young in the stomach, saying that he hates people like him the most. Those who don't know where they belong, and instead of Sung-ho, he will teach him this lesson personally. He grabs him by the hair and starts wailing on his face, while saying he'll show him what happens to a dog who bites his owner. As he goes in for another punch, a guard clears his throat, stopping him. He glances over and Jongkin starts to come up with an excuse. Jongkin looks over and laughs, saying that it was just a feint. The guard tips his hat and continues walking. Jongkin asks if he knew that a room leader can fight as much as he wants, under the pretext of maintaining order, since it's part of the role here. He raises his hand, telling him to fight back. He starts smacking him, saying to fight like he did when he took down Sung-ho. He asks Jim what's wrong with Ju-young, then throws Ju-young against the fence, saying that he's been acting like a beaten dog since earlier. He rolls up his sleeve, saying that if he acts like this, beating him is no fun. He rolls up his sleeve, then Yo-young's lifeless eyes suddenly start to shine, as he sees the tattoo of a dragon on Jongkin's arm, and he recalls his father holding him up as he stared at the dragon tattoo. Jongkin says, based on his rude-ass tone, he doesn't seem to be scared, then says he knows why, and it must be because of the accident with the truck. But gets kicked in the face. As he's reeling from the punch, Ju-young grabs onto his arm and slams him into the fence and puts his foot on his head. Jongkin turns and curses at him, and Ju-young tells him to say it again. Jongkin wonders what he's talking about, and then Ju-young kicks him in the back of the head, saying to say it again. Jongkin tells him that he's gonna die when he lets go of him, but gets kicked into the fence for the third time. Ju-young grabs onto his arm and begins to twist it. Jongkin starts to tell him to wait, asking what he is doing. Ju-young snaps his arm, breaking it, telling him to repeat himself. Jongkin lets out a scream as Ju-young holds onto his broken arm, kicking him in the back of the head. Jongkin begins to lose consciousness and takes a quick nap, and then looks at him with a cold gaze, telling him to repeat himself. It flashbacks to two old ladies talking about how Ju-young's dad is a gangster, and that it looks like he beat him up again, and that the neighborhood keeps getting worse and worse. As Ju-young walks home, he says that enduring is what he has done the best. He gets to his front door and hears a bang inside, followed by a scream. He recognizes the voice and rushes in, asking what's going on. His father says that he came just in time, and we see Yun lying on the floor. His father asks if she is his friend. Ju-young screams out to her. His father says that she barged into the house and started spouting bullshit about how she would not let it slide if he hit him again, and that he would be better off without a father like him. Ju-young recalls her talking about saying something. His father says that he decided to teach her a lesson. Ju-young begins to see red. He says that enduring is what he has always done best, and he begins to shake with anger. His father glances at him, saying that he needs to warn her that if she does this one more time. But before he finishes his sentence, we see water fly out of a vase as the flowers hit the floor. The father continues his speech about how he will kill her. Ju-young leaps at him from behind. We get a pan around the room, and we see Yun laying on the floor motionless, as Ju-young beats his father until he is soaked in blood. This was how his father got put into a vegetative state. The doctor apologizes, saying that there is almost a 0% chance of him waking up unless there is some kind of miracle. All Ju-young can think about is the dragon tattoo, and he clenches his fist, saying that this is what he needed. The flashback ends and we see prisoners surrounding Ju-young. They wonder what's going on, saying that he must have really lost it, as he just got out of the punishment room. Yet he is now causing trouble again. Ju-young looks at the tattoo on his arm, still full of anger. The guards talk over the intercom, saying that recreational time is over and to return to their rooms. We see a man looking out the window as the warden says that it's a bit noisy outside. He says that this place has a lot of hot-blooded youths, but he is glad to see the man is healthy, and he heard that he was recently discharged from the hospital. He says if he faces any trouble to let them know, and they'll do their best to make him comfortable. We learn the warden's name is Kwon Changseok. He asks the man who he is here to meet, and the man smirks. Back inside of the room, we see Jim reading his book while everybody else sits in silence. They glance over at Ju-young and wonder what he is thinking. Jim begins to write, saying that he thinks he has ended up in the same room as someone crazy. A guard then comes over to the door and calls out for Ju-young, saying to come out as he has a visitor, which surprises him. He follows the guard, wondering who it is. He says his mother ran away when he was young and he lost contact with his other relatives. When he notices that they are not in the visitor's room, but rather the warden's office. His heart starts to beat rapidly. As he hears a familiar voice saying long time no see, his heart begins to sink, and we hear the man say that it's so nice to see him acting out in the yard. Ju-young says there is no way, and we see that it's his father. His name is Cha Kang-ryong. Ju-young's is in disbelief, asking how he is here. The warden says he must be pretty shocked, and that his father just woke up not too long ago and it's a miracle. He says it must be great that his father is alive. He starts to recall the doctor saying that his father had a 0% chance of waking up, which pisses Ju-young off. Kang-ryong says he can't believe that the one who put him in this state, despite him being in a gang for his whole life, wasn't an enemy, nor the police, but his own son. He says that whenever he awoke in the hospital, he was genuinely happy, and we see him crying tears of joy, saying that this is how his son should be and that this is how it must feel to be a parent. He calls him his beloved son. He says there is nothing this father of his would not do, so he had no choice but to kill her. He starts to describe Yun's accident and how he got her ran over, but she was still alive afterwards. She looked over and begged him for help but realized who it was. Kang-ryong says that it looked as if she had seen a ghost, and how Ju-young would be happier without him, and that it's normal for parents to do such things for their children. Then he says she wouldn't understand since she never had any parents to begin with, and he left her there to die. He says that he thought he was just a pathetic idiot who only knew how to endure. But that day, he saw true potential in him, and he realized that Yun was the key. He says he wished he knew earlier, and he had no choice but to kill her and awaken him. The warden is surprised, telling Ju-young to wait as he leaps towards his father with eyes full of pure hatred. We hear electricity as we see tasers being shot into his back, causing him to seize up and slam into the floor. He screams as they hold him down. The warden sighs out of relief, saying that was close. Ju-young looks up, as his father asks if he wants revenge. He asks if he wants to kill him, saying that there is only one way for him to do that. He explains how there are a few members of his organization in this detention center, and right now they are just rookies who were just freshly tattooed. But one day, some of them will become pillars of the organization, and he needs to prove that he is the best among them by taking control of this prison. If the gang acknowledges him, he'll rise up to the day that he can reach him and slice his throat. Then he will surpass him, the second in command, and seize the Heavenly Dragon gang with his own hands. Something he was unable to do in his whole life. He says that Ju-young must be the one to do it, and that he will complete his life. He warmly smiles at Ju-young, then tells the warden that he will leave his son with him. One of the guards feels a tugging on his taser and tries his best to hold it. The warden looks over, asking what's going on. As we see Kang-ryong walking away, Ju-young has grabbed a hold of the tasers, and his father goes to turn around, as Ju-young is leaping at him through the air. He rears his fist back for a punch. Ju-young says that he is sick of his bullshit, and he will be dying here today, but before he can hit him, a man puts his hand on his head, saying to forgive him for his rudeness, calling him young master, then slams him face first into the floor. The guards are surprised, and the man says that bringing the eldest is his job. We see he has a giant X on his face. The man stands back up and is caught off guard, since Ju-young is able to resist him with just one leg, even though he is the current acting boss of the gang. Kang-ryong calls him pitiful, telling him to open his eyes and look around, asking if he still does not understand. He can never touch him, and acting rashly will only cause issues. The only way he will be able to control him is by taking control of the prison. Ju-young grits his teeth and his father smiles, saying that he will be looking forward to their next meeting, and then walks away. After the hallway is cleared, Ju-young stands back up while shaking out of rage. It jumps to the woodshop room as we see Jim cooking something up. A guard tells him that he should rest since he has already reached his goal. Some people comment on how great he is with a hammer, saying that maybe that's how he killed those 7 people. But they laugh at him, saying that he doesn't have the vibe of a murderer, but rather a loser. A man walks in, saying that he has brought the toolbox. He is told to put it over by Jim, and as he gets close, he stops and lets out a surprised sound. He drops the toolbox. The supervisor asks why he dropped it, and he says that he suddenly lost strength in his hands. Jim looks at the nail on the floor and sees it shining, and then looks up as the man says, "Holy shit," as he recognizes Jim. He says it's been so long, and they have not seen each other since middle school. We learn that his name is Gunman, and he is here for robbery and arson. He says he saw him on the news, asking if he remembers who he is. Jim says he does remember him, and calls out his full name. Gunman says that he had something to ask him if they met again, asking if he was really the one who killed those 7 people, saying that it was hard to believe that somebody like him would be able to do that. Jim asks what he is trying to say, and Gunman says nothing in particular, just that he was always a model student. The supervisor tells them to stop yapping and return to their seats. Gunman says that he hopes they see each other again. Jim looks down at all of the nails, and then realizes that when he was clenching his fist, he grabbed onto the sharp end of a nail. That night, inside of the rooms, we see everybody doing their own thing, and Ju-young sits there, lost in thought, about how he only has one goal now, and that is to kill his father. He wonders where to start. As his roommates talk about how hungry they are, they ask if they should report the prison, and how they wish there was better food here. One of them says he wishes for pizza, and after being reminded that he is in prison, he says that it's called a wish for a reason. He gets told to shut up as a prison guard walks by. Ju-young thinks about something, and then calls out to the guard. Everybody is confused, wondering why he's talking to the guard all of a sudden. Ju-young says that there's nothing wrong, then asks if they can order pizza. The guard reminds him that this place is a prison, telling him to come out right now. Then we see one of his roommates, pogging out of his gourd at the fact that they actually somehow got pizza delivered here. They start to talk about how long it has been since they had food from the outside. Then thank Ju-young. Ju-young says that he wasn't sure if it was true, but the prison warden and the guards are giving him special treatment since he is Kangryong's son. And he wants to know how far this special treatment can go. The other inmates start to wonder about Ju-young's identity, saying that maybe his father is a congressman. Ju-young resolves himself to take advantage of everything that he is given, along with the fact that his father is influential. Some of the inmates start to ask why Jim won't eat, saying that he should grab a piece, also that he has been acting weird all day. As we see him fiddling with his hand in the corner, they wonder if something happened. Later on, we see them working. As he goes to hand a box to Ju-young, we hear Gunman screaming that his hand slipped again, this time throwing the box over Jim, causing some of the nails to get stuck inside of him. Gunman apologizes, saying that his hands are slippery. Jim turns and glares at him, asking him what he thinks he is doing. We hear somebody else say that it's not like Gunman said, and that he's looking down on him. We see there are 3 people. We learn that Gunman told them that an SSS-level murderer is actually my underling. That's the next manhwa title. The man asks if he was just full of shit. Gunman is silent for a second, and then starts to laugh, saying, to just watch. He tells them all about how Jim was a kiss-ass since they were young. Gunman asks Jim if he forgot all of their wonderful memories together, then grabs him by the back of the head, slamming his face toward a nail, saying, surely this will make him remember. As the nail gets close to his eye, he starts to flash back to Gunman asking why he's shaking so much. Jim was begging him to please stop while crying. Gunman laughed, asking what he was saying, since he couldn't hear him on the other side of an Iron Maiden from Temu. Jim begged for him to let him out, and Gunman tells him not to do that, as the real fun only starts now. He grabbed a nail and put it to the cupboard, raising the hammer up, he begins to count down. Then, slams the hammer down, causing it to go into the cupboard. Jim begins to shake, and Gunman asks if he remembers now. Everybody watches and laughs about how Jim is trembling. Gunman picks up a handful of nails, asking if they really believe that a coward like Jim could really kill people. As he goes to punch Jim, Jim grabs onto his hand, causing all the nails to drop. The other prisoners look nervous, and Gunman and Ju-young both look over, as he asks if they want to learn how he killed 7 people. Gunman is taken aback and is confused, but the supervisor tells them to get back to their stations. Gunman pulls his hand away, saying to get off of him, and the rest laugh, saying that it was just getting fun. Gunman glances back and clicks his tongue, saying that he is as annoying as usual. Back inside the room, we see one of the smooth brains talking about religion to the rest. How Buddha gave everybody hamburgers, and Jesus gave us choco pies. As they argue, the piggy tells Ju-young that they will be doing their religious duties now, leaving only Ju-young and Jim. Ju-young thanks Jim, saying that if he had not stopped him with Sung-ho, he would have spent an extra 10 years rotting in here. Jim asks why he suddenly changed his mind. Ju-young tells him that he has an important reason to leave now, as the one who killed his friend was his father. Jim says that he thought his father was a vegetable. Ju-young tells him that it is a long story, but thanks to him he will be able to leave soon. Jim looks curious, asking if he is mocking him, since he knows that he has 20 years left in here. Embarrassed, Ju-young says that's not it, and that his point is that he will make sure to repay his debt. Jim says that is okay with him. Later on, inside of the wood shop, the supervisor hands him the key, saying that something urgent came up at home, so he will be leaving this to him today, and tells him good luck. Jim looks down at the table and sees a moth. He begins to recall Gunman, and flashbacks us to when they were younger. Gunman was showing him a butterfly that he taxidermied when they were 11 years old. Jim tells him that he doesn't really like bugs because they are gross. We learn that Gunman was Jim's first ever friend. Later on in middle school, we see some students laughing about Gunman, saying that he is creepy, and all he does is collect bugs, and that it's gross. One of them asks if he is trying to eat them, and Gunman panics, saying that's not it. The dude makes an L joke that I am not repeating. As they keep teasing him, Jim enters, telling them that he knows they are bored, but to return to their seats. Since he is the class president, and they are afraid of him punishing them, they all leave and apologize. Jim quickly asks Gunman if he is okay. He says yes, and thanks him. Then asks if he is still coming over to his house later today. Before he can answer, some other students enter, telling him to come play soccer with them. He tries to tell them that he has plans, but they peer pressure him into going. Jim says that he wasn't fully aware, but they started to grow further and further apart, and the next year they were in separate classes. As he is walking by Gunman's classroom, he hears some of the students talking about him, saying that he is being bullied, and that he was drugged off to a warehouse today. Upon hearing this, Jim quickly starts to haul cheeks, and is gassed out once he makes it. Inside he sees a bunch of delinquents, and asks them where Gunman is. They laugh and say they have no idea, but says to turn around. As we see Gunman right behind Jim, he pushes him into the cupboard. Jim is surprised, and asks him what he is doing. Annoyed, Gunman does his best to close the door, and then locks it. Some of them say that he really did catch an insect, and they say that he is crazy. One of them says that he told him to offer up his most precious insect, if he wants to join their gang, and then laughs, saying he did not expect this. Jim tries to get Gunman to release him, but Gunman tells him to be patient, since he just caught an insect, he needs to proceed with the taxidermy while it is still alive. The flashback ends, as Gunman says that moths and butterflies are both insects, but one is hated, while the other is loved. He picks up the moth, saying that it is just like him from back then, and then crushes it, saying that everything is all his fault. Jim asks what he means, and Gunman tells him to stop pretending like he does not know. While he acts like a saint, he was secretly distancing himself from him, asking if he thought he would not catch on. He says he knows he was always thinking that he was just a disgusting moth, while he was a butterfly, glorified by others. The moment he realized this is how he thought of him, it felt like he was living on the edge of a cliff. But then the person who made him like this jumped off the cliff all on his own. When he heard the news about him becoming a murderer, he felt hella happy. He says it felt like poetic justice. Jim clenches his fist out of anger, asking what kind of delusion he is living in. As he goes to say something, the lights cut off. Gunman starts to laugh, saying it does not matter if he's delusional, as his life is already in shambles and he will soon turn into nothing but dust. As we see the goon squad pick him up, Gunman says that he knew he was not normal when he bribed the coach, but he's even more fun than he thought. Gunman smiles, saying not to pass out, as he still has to taxidermy him. He sees a locker and begins to have Vietnam flashbacks. He yells telling them to wait, and Gunman says that it's all because of him. Jim tries to stop him from closing the door, but Gunman closes it and ties it up with chains. Jim asks if he thinks he'll fall victim to the same trick twice. Gunman then says that he prepared a special gift for him on the inside, and we see bugs begin to crawl over him. Gunman says that his insect friends are in there. We see everybody waiting for him to scream, and Gunman asks if he likes it, but quickly realizes that there's no response, saying that even butterflies used to scare him, so he must be trying his best to hold it all in. Two of the goons start to mock him, and the bigger one asks Gunman if he thinks he'll be okay, since Jim is in here for murder after all. Gunman smiles, asking why that matters, and the man says he really is out of his mind. Gunman tells him that he is just getting started, and that they'll hear him screaming soon, and it'll sound as if his vocal cords are being ripped out. Somebody begins to walk through them, as Ju-young asks them how that happened. They say that he scared them, asking who he is. Ju-young asks them how they're going to make him scream, and then grabs onto one of the men's shoulders, causing him to scream. Another goon comes in for a punch, but gets instantly kicked in the face, causing him to fly straight into the locker. Gunman is caught off guard. As the locker cracks open, Ju-young calls out to Jim, saying that he told him he will pay his debt, and to consider them even now. It flashbacks us to the room as some of them are talking, about how Jim got called to the woodshop room, and that the supervisor called him out of nowhere, for some cleanup. Ju-young realizes it's weird, then stands up. He asks the guard to come to the door. The guard asks him what he needs, and the inmates start to drool, saying that he's gotta be getting them food again. But instead Ju-young tells the man to just open the door, which catches them all off guard. The guard asks him what he just said. Then the flashback ends as we see 2 of the 3 goons on the floor. The bigger one, will call him Pork Chop, approaches, saying that he has heard about Ju-young causing trouble recently. Gunman starts to hum and Pork Chop says he wasn't sure when he saw him next to Jim before, but he gets it now. And that they must be pretty close. In a mocking tone, Gunman says that it must be nice for Jim to have such a great friend. And he wishes he had one like that too. Pork Chop says that he's got a real rude tone and calls Ju-young loyal. He raises his fist asking him to be friends with him. But before he can even attempt to swing, we see his world gets turned upside down as Ju-young comes in with the fattest judo throw of the century, straight slamming his face into the floor. Ju-young says that he doesn't want to become friends with somebody like him, and that he would rather die. He then calls out to Gunman asking why he is doing this, saying that it's gone too far. Gunman asks what he means by too far. With a smile on his face, Gunman asks if he is kidding him, saying that because of Jim, he's lived in pain. He pretended to be his friend, acting like he cared. Then behind his back tried to take him down like a snake. He says that he is warning him too, that he'll always need to watch his back. We see Pork Chop on cue coming up from behind. He grabs onto Ju-young asking if he thought it would be that easy, and that all this build-up was for this moment. Gunman tells him to crush him and Pork Chop asks him again if he wants to be friends. Ju-young says that Pork Chop's grip is no joke, and he needs to get out of this hold. He grabs onto his pinky, saying that he'll never be able to use this finger again. But before he can break it, Gunman comes in and stabs him in the stomach, saying that he scored a point. Pork Chop laughs, saying that Gunman is a great friend. Ju-young's face begins to change color due to the lack of oxygen. And Jim says to relax as he puts a chain around Pork Chop's neck, saying he will snap it. Gunman is surprised, wondering when he got out, saying it must have been when the locker broke. While Gunman is thinking about this, Ju-young quickly kicks him in the face, causing him to get launched across the room. He turns back around and tells Jim that was close. We see the chains tighten up around Pork Chop's throat, but he says that he's too strong for this weak shit. He begins to walk forward, while being choked out, and Gunman tells him to keep it up. Jim grits his teeth, saying that if he strains his neck it'll snap. As he puts his foot to the back of Pork Chop's head, and begins to push forward while pulling the chain down. They quickly begin to start dripping with blood. Jim says if he doesn't relax his neck, he will die here. Pork Chop begins to lose consciousness, and then falls face first into the floor. Jim is gassed out. Ju-young looks down at Pork Chop, while Jim glances over at Gunman and begins to walk towards him. Gunman tells him that he's the victim and it's all his fault. He pleads that it's self-defense, and he's done nothing wrong, as Jim gets right in his face. He falls to the floor out of fear and starts to grovel, begging him for forgiveness, saying that he must have lost his mind. Gunman says that he should know him, and how he's always been a loser, and to think of this is just a mistake. But Jim says that he is wrong, and he never thought of him that way. Gunman makes a dumb expression as Jim explains how his victim mentality ruined his life. But it does not matter, as he's already killed 7 people, and he even thought about doing the same to him right now. But seeing him made him realize that he doesn't hate him as much as he thought, since they were friends. Gunman starts to think about when they were kids, but grins, saying that's a load of bullshit. He thinks about how Jim is just a pushover. He says he'll make sure to pay him back, but then decides to show us his new gymnast routine. As he flips around the room, Ju-young says that they'll call it even with this. Jim looks touched, and flashbacks us to when they were talking earlier. As Ju-young asks him if he is just mentally ill. Jim asks if he is picking a fight, but Ju-young says that he killed 7 people yet is scared of Gunman. Jim tells him that he was not scared. Then they sit there in awkward silence. Ju-young says that he knows that much, while he is not sure what kind of relationship they had. He can clearly see that Jim does not consider him an enemy. The flashback ends with Jim asking what he would know, and Ju-young asks why he hasn't left yet. Jim calls out to him and smiles while thanking him. Ju-young says he's freaking him out. We hear a man sighing, while calling out to Gunman on the floor. Ju-young wonders what's the deal now, and he turns to see a man asking Gunman why he left without his permission, saying that he was scared. Obviously Gunman cannot respond, and the man punches him in the face, saying he saw a cockroach while wailing on him. He says that there was nobody to catch it, and he thought he was going to die. Gunman's blood begins to fly across the room. Once the man gets tired of beating him, he stands up, saying that it got all over his face. Then mentions how he is getting dirty, as blood is full of germs. He grabs onto Ju-young, using him as a tissue paper to wipe the blood off. And then looks up at Ju-young with a smile on his face, asking him if it is clean now. If you've watched till the end, comment, curly fries, to let me know. Subscribe for more videos like this, leave a like or a comment to help the channel out. Thanks for watching.